There is a moment when something inside us silently breaks, an almost imperceptible snap, as if the very texture of the air were changing. It is the exact point at which ordinary observation ceases to be sufficient. It's not known for sure what causes it, a loss, a gesture, a random word spoken. But from that instant, everything that previously seemed fixed begins to dissolve. The world becomes translucent, as if hiding another layer of reality just below the surface, pulsating, waiting to be seen. There is no turning back after this. It's like waking from one dream into another, vaster and more ambiguous. The colors intensify, but also become stranger. The people, the conversations, the places that once comforted you now seem distant, as if you were observing them from inside a thick glass. No one notices that something has changed, but you know. And this silent certainty is the beginning of loneliness. Carl Jung said that awakening begins when an individual realizes they are not what they thought they were. This simple realization is enough to destabilize an entire existence. The self, once as firm as a mask glued to the face, begins to detach. The discomfort arises of realizing that one's own identity was a fiction crafted to survive among others. The mind reacts with fear, because everything it knew crumbles. But it is precisely in this abyss that consciousness awakens. Those who begin to change feel something akin to being out of sync with the rhythm of the world. Like a musician who hears the true melody, while the rest of the orchestra plays in a different key. The dissonance hurts. Instinctively, one tries to return to the old harmony, to readjust. But it's too late. What has been seen cannot be forgotten. The beliefs that sustained daily life reveal themselves to be fragile. The goals and desires, artifices to postpone the emptiness. And the emptiness, that which is so feared, is the first gateway. It is at this boundary that the true metamorphosis begins. Just like the caterpillar that isolates itself inside its cocoon, the being in transition must confront the isolation of its own soul. Everyone around continues with their roles, their certainties, their haste. You, however, feel suspended between two worlds, the old one which no longer contains you, and the new one, which does not yet have a form. And in this interval, the mind whispers dangerous questions. What am I, if not my memories? Who observes what I think? And what if everything I experience is just a projection of something greater trying to know itself through me? Jung called this process individuation, the slow and painful birth of the self. He said that the unconscious is not a dark region to be avoided, but a living field that holds the meaning of totality. Entering it is to risk losing one's own form in order to be reborn in another way. Many fear this crossing and prefer to remain asleep, repeating inherited roles. But there are those who can no longer pretend. They feel the call, the irresistible impulse to move forward, even without a map, even without a promise of return. And this is where the danger intensifies. Because expanding consciousness touches zones that reason cannot comprehend. Social, familial, and moral structures were created to keep the individual in balance within the known. Breaking these structures is like tearing one's own horizon. Fear comes in waves, fear of going mad, of losing the love of others, of dissolving. And yet, it is only by traversing this fear that the being discovers that true love is not outside, but in the recognition of one's own center. Jung said that the ego cannot find the self without first confronting the shadow, that set of denied, forgotten, repressed aspects. And when the shadow emerges, it doesn't come gently. It imposes itself as a force, compelling the individual to look at what they have avoided all their life. Fear, envy, anger, desire, deep sadness, everything that was exiled returns with its own face. Many give up at this point. They confuse the appearance of the shadow with spiritual downfall. But Jung saw the opposite. It was a sign that the process had truly begun. What few understand is that this awakening is not a linear movement. It is a cycle of death and rebirth. There are days of crystal clarity, followed by long nights of confusion. There are moments when the world seems to pulsate with profound meaning, and others when everything seems purposeless again. Each stage requires surrender, letting go of control, trusting the invisible, accepting uncertainty as part of the journey. The soul grows in the interval between what we are and what we do not yet know ourselves to be. Few realize how lonely this process is. The awakening individual feels the distance between themselves and the world growing. Old conversations seem insignificant. Collective ambitions lose their luster. The desire to belong mixes with the urgency to break free. And it is at this exact point that many turn back, seeking refuge in normality. But something within them, something that has already seen what lies beyond, does not leave them in peace. Life begins to speak through signs, coincidences, intense dreams, premonitions. The language of the unconscious replaces linear logic. Jung said that symbols are the way the unconscious communicates what reason has not yet grasped. A symbol doesn't explain, but reveals. It doesn't answer, but invites. And when these symbols begin to emerge, life takes on a secret rhythm. A bird crossing the path, a phrase repeating itself in different places, a dream that insists on returning. Nothing seems casual anymore. Everything acquires the flavor of destiny. The individual feels they are being guided but doesn't know by whom. And it is in this mystery that true alchemy happens. Pain then becomes a tool. Isolation, a field for listening. Confusion, an invitation to humility. And slowly, between shadows and glimpses, a new perception emerges, that there is no separation between what we observe and what we are. The external and internal worlds merge into a single mirror. What once seemed chaotic reveals a hidden design, and it is in this moment of clarity that the being understands that solitude was never abandonment, but preparation. But what comes next? What happens when the old self dies and the new one is yet to be born? What lies at the heart of this silence that precedes revelation? Is it possible to cross over without getting lost? Or is loss itself the price of truth? These questions don't demand answers, they demand courage. And it is precisely this courage that the spirit begins to feel sprouting, like a timid flame in the dark. Carl Jung said that the unconscious is not the enemy, but a guide. That chaos is not the end, but the womb of creation. Perhaps then awakening is not a path of ascent, but of descent, an immersion in the depths where fear itself holds the key to the light. And when that light finally emerges, it will be so intense that there will be no turning back. For whoever sees what lies beyond can no longer live as if they had not seen it. And so ends the first movement of the journey, with an open soul and a suspended horizon. The cocoon closes, the old world slowly fades away. In the darkness, something invisible begins to form. And what will come next will not be just another change. It will be the birth of a new perspective. When the light begins to dawn, the old world doesn't disappear. It's still there, with its bills to pay, its commitments, its clocks ticking the exact hours. You still need to wake up early, answer messages, attend meetings, take care of household chores. But something has changed in the invisible structure of these actions. The common gesture of opening a door, crossing a street, looking at someone's face now carries a disturbing glow, a silent presence that seems to watch right through you. It's as if two worlds coexist, the world everyone sees and the other, the one that pulsates behind it, where every detail seems to contain a coded message. Carl Jung said that the awakened being lives between two languages, that of the market and that of mystery. One speaks of goals, schedules, and profits. The other speaks of symbols, silences, and omens. Balancing the two is an arduous learning process, as one demands efficiency and control, and the other demands surrender and listening. In the beginning, you try to keep them in harmony. You smile at dinners, make plans, laugh at jokes, but you feel like an actor in a play whose plot no longer convinces you. The laughter sounds false, the enthusiasm seems forced, and a subtle unease begins to grow behind every gesture. There's a particular morning that marks this estrangement. You wake up, make coffee, turn on the news. The voices talk about politics, economics, disasters, as always. but something inside you senses the absurdity of the repetition. The words sound like distant noise, and the steam rising from the cup seems more real than everything announced on the screen. In that instant, a dizziness runs through your chest, a silent certainty that visible life is only the surface of something much vaster. And yet you need to go out, work, socialize. At the office, conversations revolve around deadlines, projects, vacations. You observe the faces, the automatic gestures, the nervous laughter, and you feel tenderness and sadness. It's like watching an ancient dance, beautiful and tragic at the same time. No one seems to notice that the repetitions are consuming them. You try to participate, but you feel out of place. The words come out of your mouth, but something inside you remains silent, watching from afar. Jung asserted that spiritual awakening does not distance human beings from daily life. On the contrary, it compels them to delve into it more deeply. It is as if each act, cooking, driving, working, becomes a mirror of the collective unconscious. Everything one does takes on a double meaning. A simple argument reveals old wounds. A trivial setback awakens forgotten angers. A banal coincidence transforms into a sign. Life becomes a living text, and the unconscious the true author. But living between two worlds comes at a high price. People start to sense that there's something different about you. Some distance themselves, others try to bring you back to your former role. You've been acting strangely, they say. You seem distracted, disconnected, and you realize you can no longer pretend to be who you were. The mask has fallen, and the face that emerges beneath is still nameless. It is at this point that loneliness ceases to be a circumstance and becomes an initiation. On certain nights, the silence weighs like a presence. You feel your mind expand inward, as if the universe were folding back on its own center. Thoughts mingle with images: an empty road, a window open to the wind, a child gazing at the sky without understanding why. Life seems to speak in metaphors, and you begin to understand them without needing words. It is the unconscious dialoguing directly with the soul. Jung said that this dialogue is the true path to individuation, the moment when man begins to become whole. But wholeness is a challenge for those who have always lived divided. One day, you feel immense clarity, a serenity that makes you believe you understand everything. The next, you feel lost again, confused, afraid you invented what you saw. Oscillation is inevitable. It's the movement of consciousness trying to stabilize itself between the human and the eternal. And in this back and forth, small shocks arise. A look that hurts you, a gesture that irritates you, a word that destabilizes you. These are the tests of reality, reminders that enlightenment is not escape but immersion. One day, during a family lunch, you find yourself observing how everyone speaks. Each person seems trapped in an invisible script. The complaints, the repeated stories, the veiled disputes. Everything repeats itself like a play that has been performed for centuries. You realize that no one is truly listening to the other. They are merely reaffirming their roles. And suddenly you feel compassion. Not the compassion of someone who considers themselves superior, but that of someone who recognizes they were once the same. And in that instant, your heart opens. There are tears, but they are not tears of sadness. They are tears of recognition. You understand that awakening is not about distancing yourself from the world, but about seeing it with broader eyes. Even so, returning to daily life is hard. There are moments when everything seems to lose its meaning. Money, status, achievements, everything dissolves into dust before the immensity of what you felt. And that's where the danger creeps in. The risk of becoming detached from the earth, of losing contact with concrete reality. Jung wisely warned about this point. The spirit that flies too high can burn its own wings if it forgets the body. It is necessary to remain in the world, but with another kind of presence, the presence of one who knows that the visible world is only a reflection of something invisible. And then, the subtle signs begin. A recurring dream in which you walk through an old house, opening doors that didn't exist before. a chance encounter with someone who utters a phrase that echoes within you for days, an inexplicable feeling of being guided by something invisible, gently pushing you toward a new destiny. It's no longer coincidence, it's synchronicity, as Jung said, the way the unconscious manifests itself in matter. You begin to understand that every event, no matter how banal, is part of a hidden orchestration. Nothing is random. Even misunderstandings have a purpose. Old pains return not to wound, but to reveal what still needs to be loved. Fears cease to be enemies and become teachers. What was once an obstacle is now a path. Your entire life reorganizes itself around a new gravity, the inner center. But the outside world reacts. Friends say you've changed too much. Some mock you, others worry. They try to convince you to go back to being like before. And, for a moment, the temptation is great. The simplicity of ignorance seems like a relief. Going back to caring only about what is visible would be so easy. But there's something inside you that prevents the return. What you saw, what you felt, what you intuited, it has transformed you irreversibly. It's like trying to put an ocean into a glass. The glass breaks. In the midst of this rupture, the most dangerous and, at the same time, most fertile moment arises. The crossing of the inner desert. It is when nothing makes sense, when the silence seems empty, and the invisible falls silent. Many believe they have failed, but it is precisely there that the being is being molded. Jung said that the unconscious is like nature. It works in silence and only reveals itself when the time is right. What seems like abandonment is, in fact, gestation. There comes a day when, without warning, perception shifts again. You're walking down the street distracted and the world seems to breathe with you. The leaves shimmer differently. The wind caresses your skin as if in an ancient greeting. Everything is the same, and yet everything is different. It's the same world, but now it contains you. And you understand that there was never separation, only forgetfulness. At that moment, the duality between the sacred and the common dissolves. The marketplace and mystery become one and the same. Making dinner, embracing someone, paying a bill, everything acquires the same symbolic value. Everyday life becomes a temple, and it is at this point that the seeker becomes a guardian, not of truths, but of presences. However, the story doesn't end here. Awakening is not a destination, it's a spiral. With each turn, new shadows are revealed, new horizons open. The challenge now is to remain awake within the flow of life, without getting lost in extremes, neither in the ecstasy of transcendence, nor in the prison of routine. And when silence returns, as it inevitably does, it is no longer a threat, but repose. Because within it, something greater observes it tenderly. Something that has always been there, waiting for the right moment to be recognized. Carl Jung said that this something is the self, the luminous center that sustains everything. And perhaps true awakening is not seeing the invisible, but realizing that the invisible has always seen through us. Thus, the journey continues, between the marketplace and the mystery, between the visible and the eternal. The awakened being walks in both worlds with the serenity of one who no longer seeks a way out, but meaning. The cocoon has broken, and now the wings, still fragile, touch the light for the first time. And what will come next? That remains a secret of the path, kept in the silence where all revelation begins. There will come a moment when the world will begin to react to your change. Not immediately or explicitly, but in subtle gestures, in glances that linger a second longer, in silences that didn't exist before. The people around you, accustomed to the old you, begin to notice that something in your way of being has changed. Perhaps you are no longer bothered by the same discussions, nor are you as enthusiastic about the same achievements. You seem quieter, more attentive, like someone listening to something that others don't hear. And this, however silent it may be, causes unease. The new in you confronts the old in others. Carl Jung said that the transformation of an individual is always a miniature collective event. When one person awakens, They disturb the unconscious equilibrium of the group, and the group reacts. Some will try to pull them back to convince them that they are drifting too far, that they are overthinking. Others, without knowing why, will simply distance themselves. They cannot bear the mirror that their presence has become, because the one who begins to see deeper inevitably reveals how much everyone else is still asleep. But is it really possible to remain awake without causing discomfort? And what if the expansion of consciousness is, by nature, a subversive force, capable of dismantling social masks? Is spiritual awakening at its core an act of sacred rebellion against the mediocrity of the world? At first, you try to disguise it. You speak cautiously, measure your words, avoid profound topics. You smile in conversations even when everything sounds superficial. But the effort to maintain appearances becomes a growing burden. Living divided is an invisible weariness, a wound that bleeds from within. It's like trying to breathe at two different rhythms at the same time. The soul craves sincerity, but coexistence demands disguise. And this conflict, this silent tension, corrodes the spirit more forcefully than any solitude. Jung said that inner truth, once perceived, demands to be lived. To deny it is like denying one's own blood. You try for a time to contain the impulse, to adapt, to blend back into the crowd. But there is something within you that refuses. A voice, subtle yet firm, begins to make itself heard. Live what you know. That voice is the self, the awakened center. And to ignore it is like falling asleep again within your own dream. What happens when love for others conflicts with fidelity to one's own soul? To what extent is it possible to remain authentic without breaking the bonds that sustain us? And when silence is no longer enough, what should be said, and to whom? Most who go through this journey choose the path of dissimulation. They maintain appearances, meet expectations, feign interest, but inside they live a different story. It's a social survival strategy, a way to protect what is new until it strengthens. Jung saw this as a necessary strategy. The self should not be exposed before it is mature. But if the pretense goes on for too long, the risk is different. Losing touch with one's own truth. The discovered treasure is buried again, and the seeker returns to inner poverty, more aware, but sadder. What if society, in its collective unconscious, is an organism that resists individual metamorphosis? Does the world fear the awakened because they prove that prison is not inviolable? The days grow heavier. With each conversation, you feel the weight of empty words. With each mechanical gesture, your heart shrinks. Friends invite you to the same places, and everything seems like an exhausted repetition of something that's already over. There's no drama, no fighting, just a slow, almost melancholic distancing. Laughter sounds distant, and the company that once comforted you now tires you. It's as if the air between you has become thin. But at the same time, there are moments of unexpected grace. An old song that comes on the radio and makes you cry. A stranger who stares at you on the street and smiles as if he recognizes you. Small flashes that remind you that the invisible still accompanies you. The path is not a straight line, but a spiral that leads you inward. You might ask yourself, is isolation a punishment or an initiation? And what if solitude is the necessary price to pay to hear one's own soul without interference? Jung claimed that when an individual distances themselves from the crowd, the unconscious begins to speak more clearly. And what it says isn't always pleasant. Sometimes it reveals what you don't want to see. Pride disguised as humility, fear masquerading as prudence, the desire to be understood when, in reality, what you want is to be admired. Each revealed shadow demands brutal honesty. Consciousness becomes a mirror that doesn't forgive distortions. And the more you look, the more you realize that the enemy isn't outside, it's inside. But what happens when you finally accept this revelation? When you stop fighting against what is dark and begin to listen to what it has to say? The answer comes in fragments, in dreams, and in everyday signs. In one of them, you walk alone through a deserted city. The lights flicker and the air seems heavy. In the center of the square, there is a mirror hanging in the void. You approach and see not your face, but that of a child. She observes you in silence. It is your gaze before the wounds, before the roles, before the world. In that instant, something within you breaks and reconciles at the same time. You understand without words that the path is not to become something new, but to remember what you have always been. What if awakening is less about ascension and more about a return? What if true maturity is about relearning innocence with awareness? After this vision, everyday reality changes texture. The noise of the street seems distant, as if it came from another plane. People continue running, talking, complaining, and you observe them with a mixture of compassion and bewilderment. There is no more judgment, only a tranquil perception that each person is at the exact point in their own process. Hatred, fear, envy, everything that once hurt you now seems part of a vast healing movement. The collective shadow, Jung would say, tries to redeem itself through the small pains of each individual. But is it possible to live like this without disconnecting from the world? How can you keep your feet firmly on the ground while your soul already inhabits another horizon? There are days when the weight of the material world pulls you back. Obligations, bills, noise. Everything forces you to re-enter the fabric of the ordinary. And curiously, that's where true initiation happens. Not in retreat, nor in ecstasy, but in the midst of the crowd. The awakened being learns to be in the world without being of it, to act without clinging to the outcome, to speak without getting lost in words. Wisdom lies not in fleeing from confusion, but in maintaining clarity within it. Jung viewed this state as the hero's return to the marketplace. The seeker returns with the light he found in the depths, but now carries it discreetly, like a flame within his chest. He doesn't need to preach or convince. His mere presence changes the air. His attention, his calmness, his silent listening become his way of teaching. And yet something surprises you. The world, which seemed hostile, begins to respond differently. The same people who previously considered you distant now seek you out in moments of pain. They sense, without understanding, that there is a peace within you that doesn't depend on circumstances. And you realize, with humility, that your solitude was the necessary price to pay to become a refuge for others. But is this the end of the journey, or just the beginning of a greater calling, that of definitively integrating the invisible with the visible, the spirit with the flesh, heaven with earth? Carl Jung said that human beings only find wholeness when the conscious and unconscious recognize each other. Perhaps that's it. Awakening is neither escape nor superiority, but reconciliation. It's learning to live in peace with contradictions. It's discovering that light doesn't destroy the shadow. It illuminates it. And when this understanding finally touches you, you realize that there is no longer any possible separation. Everything is the same movement, the same breath, the same eternal instant that pulsates through you. Silence returns, now not as absence but as fullness. And for the first time you feel you can simply be, without needing to prove, convince, or seek. The inner fire no longer consumes, it warms. The gaze no longer wounds, it embraces. The heart no longer demands, it understands. And in this state of stillness, something opens, as if the universe itself were breathing along with you. And perhaps, just perhaps, this is the true miracle. Remaining human after touching the infinite. You cannot go back. Everything you saw remains within you, like an invisible tattoo that no darkness can erase. But you also cannot move forward without crossing the intermediate territory, that space where the old forms have already died and the new ones have not yet been born. It is there that the soul is tested, and each step seems like a plunge into the unknown. Carl Jung called this interval the dark night of the spirit, the period in which the conscious loses its bearings and the unconscious takes the lead. The external world seems the same, but perception changes radically. Colors become distant, time stretches, sounds turn into echoes. Everything vibrates with a silent strangeness, as if the universe were watching you. This is where many believe they've lost their way. You wake up and feel an emptiness in your chest, a weight that doesn't come from sadness but from a lack of solid ground. You walk through the streets and everything seems like a staged scene. Hurried people, cars, shop windows, lights. A theater where you no longer have a role. Loneliness, which was once a refuge, now becomes a landscape. But the paradox is that this feeling of isolation is the exact sign that something deep is reorganizing itself. The old self needs to die completely so that the new one can breathe. And the death of the self is slow, gradual, silent, sometimes almost unbearable. You try to remember what motivated you to begin this journey. You think about going back, pretending nothing happened, recovering the lost simplicity. But you soon realize that returning is impossible. You cannot unsee the truth, nor unlearn what has become part of your blood. And at that moment, the doubt that torments every seeker arises. Is the spiritual path really a path, or just a detour that leads to madness? On a sleepless night, you get up and look at your reflection in the mirror. The face is the same, but the gaze is different. There's an old weariness mixed with an inexplicable serenity. Suddenly a memory surfaces, a childhood afternoon, the feeling of gazing at the sky without haste, of feeling part of something greater without needing to understand. You realize then that the search was never for something new, but for what had been forgotten. Jung said that the soul doesn't transform, it remembers. A few days later, something unexpected happens. In the midst of routine, a synchronicity so improbable that you can't ignore it. Perhaps a person mentions the very topic that has been silently tormenting you. Or an old book falls from the shelf, open to the page where the answer you were looking for is written. These small miracles tear through the fabric of doubt. They are like coded messages from the unconscious confirming that the path is real. Jung described this phenomenon as proof that the psyche and the physical world are faces of the same totality. What if the entire universe were a conscious mirror, responding to the movements of your soul? Could every coincidence be a secret language trying to remind you of who you are? As the dark night deepens, the mind tries to resist. Rational thought, accustomed to control, cannot bear the mystery. It demands explanations. It wants to understand what is happening. But the inner process cannot be translated. It asks for surrender, not analysis. And it is when you finally stop fighting that the silence changes texture. It ceases to be empty and begins to fill with presence. There is something there, invisible, but as real as the body itself. A consciousness that observes you, that contains you. It's as if the universe sustains you from within. On a rainy afternoon while wandering aimlessly, you enter a bookstore just to take shelter. And there, among forgotten shelves, you find an old diary, a publication without a clear author, marked by time. Upon opening it, you realize that the entries describe exactly what you are experiencing. The same doubts, the same emptiness, the same feeling of being between worlds. At the end of the last page, a handwritten phrase, "No birth happens without a dark womb." You close the book with trembling hands. Centuries ago, someone had already crossed the same abyss. Does each soul travel the same path at different times, only with new faces and untold stories? Carl Jung said that individual transformation is the eternal myth that repeats itself in each generation. The modern hero wields no swords nor faces visible dragons. He fights against his own illusions. And victory is not glory, it is understanding. The dark night is not punishment, it is gestation. When it seems densest, it is because the new is about to be born. You learn to wait, to observe the inner movement with patience. Pain begins to transform into listening. Then something changes. Without anything happening on the outside, a profound peace takes you by surprise. You walk the same streets, see the same people, but now everything seems alive, vibrant. A vendor smiles, and the gesture has the weight of a revelation. A child runs in the rain, and you feel like crying. Nothing extraordinary happens, and yet everything is extraordinary. The world hasn't changed. You have changed, and the world has responded. But there is an even greater mystery. This serenity is not permanent. It comes and goes like the tide, and each time it recedes, it brings with it the fear of having lost it forever. It is in this cycle of expansion and contraction that the soul matures. Light teaches, absence confirms. Jung said that the psyche needs contrast. Without darkness, consciousness does not recognize its own clarity. What if the meaning of life lies not in permanence, but in oscillation? What if true balance is learning to move between heaven and earth with the same confidence? One day, without planning, you meet other people who share the same gaze. There aren't many, but a single conversation is enough to know that they too have crossed the dark night. They speak little, listen much, and there is something silently sacred in their presence. It's as if they share a language that dispenses with words. There are no masters or disciples, only travelers recognizing each other on the journey. You understand that solitude, though necessary, was not the final destination. It was the portal that would lead you to authentic communion. These encounters happen in unlikely places, in a cafe, on a road, in any queue. There are no coincidences. Each awakened soul attracts those who vibrate at the same frequency. Jung believed that the collective unconscious reorganizes itself when individuals reach a new level of consciousness. It's as if the universe, in response, brings together the right pieces on an invisible chessboard. What if spiritual friendship is the way in which the cosmos recognizes itself? Over time, the fear of being alone dissolves. Life resumes its flow. Work, tasks, and daily conversations return. But now everything is viewed from a point of stillness. You no longer react, you only respond. You no longer seek approval, only presence. So, what was once conflict is now flow. The darkness, once frightening, has become fertile ground. From it have sprung clarity, compassion, and courage. One night, while walking through the city, you look at the reflection of the lights on the wet asphalt and notice something new. There is no longer a separation between the sacred and the profane. The traffic, the voices, the rain, everything pulsates in unison. It is the same energy that moves stars and hearts. And in that instant, you understand what Jung meant when he wrote that the divine is an inner experience that requires human form to manifest itself. The journey is not over, but the fear of the unknown has lost its hold. You finally understand that the dark night was not an absence of light, but a different way of shining. And upon realizing this, you smile. Because what once seemed like solitude was, in fact, the womb of creation. The space where the old dies and the new breathes for the first time. And perhaps the greatest secret of all is this: awakening doesn't take you away from the world, but returns you to it. Now, every ordinary gesture is a form of prayer. Every word spoken attentively is a rite. Every glance, a mirror of eternity. You cross the desert, and upon emerging from it, you discover that paradise was always exactly where you are. It was just waiting for you to open your eyes to see it. Sometimes the true miracle lies not in finding something new, but in rediscovering the world with a different perspective. After the journey, life begins to delicately rebuild itself, as if the universe were testing the solidity of its new form. Things seem to fall back into place, but there's an invisible detail that changes everything. Now you see from within, no longer from without. The streets, the sounds, the gestures of the people. Everything carries a hidden vibration. It's as if each instant were a word in a secret language, and you finally learn to read it. Carl Jung said that true individuation manifests when the spirit finds roots in matter. It is when the divine becomes everyday and the human becomes sacred. You begin to perceive this in small events. A look that touches you, a silence that becomes an answer, a gesture that previously went unnoticed and now has the weight of a symbol. Nothing is banal anymore. Everything is presence. But it is precisely when this serenity settles in that the new test arises, the return to the world. Others see him and notice something different, though they can't quite put their finger on it. There's a calmness in his movements, a silent firmness in his words. Some approach with curiosity, others with distrust. It's natural. His light, however small, awakens shadows in those who still fear to look within. And the challenge now is to remain at peace, even in the face of rejection. You learn that you don't need to defend what is true. Reality sustains itself. One afternoon, amidst the routine, a reunion occurs. Someone from the past, an old friend, appears with the same smile, but with a deeper gaze. You talk about trivial things, but there's something new in his presence. And then, without warning, he looks at you and says, "I don't know what happened to you, but something in me changed just by being here." This phrase echoes in your chest like a silent confirmation. The inner transformation begins to radiate. It's not discourse, it's not theory, it's contagious. Could the awakening of one person ignite that of many? Is each awakened soul a spark of the collective unconscious, trying to remember itself? Days go by and you realize you don't need to seek disciples, followers, or recognition. The work happens by itself, invisibly. Sometimes a casual conversation enlightens someone. Other times, a gesture of listening prevents a fall. The impact is not in what is done, but in the quality of the presence. Jung said that the true healer is the one who has healed themselves to the point of being able to sustain the suffering of others without being destroyed by it. That's what's beginning to happen now. The world continues to hurt, but you no longer bleed along with it. You transform pain into understanding. But not everything is smooth sailing. The world still tries to trap you with old snares. A tempting offer arises, an opportunity that promises security, but demands that you deny a part of who you've become. There's also the fear of starting over, the doubt about whether serenity is real or just a refuge. And then the universe, in its precise pedagogy, places you before a choice. Follow the truth or return to convenience. The heart knows the answer, but the mind wavers. What if losing this chance means losing everything? What if the truth is a path without guarantees, without applause, without return? On the night before the decision, you dream. You walk down a narrow corridor, lit only by a flame flickering in your hands. The air is thick and the walls seem to move. At the end of the corridor, two doors, one golden, imposing, shining with promise, the other simple of raw wood, almost imperceptible. You hesitate, but feel your body move on its own. Upon touching the wood, the flame goes out, and the darkness opens into light. You wake up sweating but at peace. Your subconscious has already chosen. The next day, you reject what seemed right and follow what seems like madness. You lose comfort, you gain freedom. You feel fear, but a different kind of fear, the fear that heralds growth. Jung said that every step towards wholeness implies a sacrifice. Something needs to die so that something more authentic can live. And when that sacrifice is accepted without resistance, destiny begins to cooperate. Coincidences start happening again. The right doors open. The path is reconfigured. But there's a new paradox. The further you advance, the less you need certainty. Confidence replaces control. The answers don't matter as much as the honesty of the questions. You realize that mystery, far from being a threat, is now an ally. What once frightened you becomes a compass. The invisible, which seemed distant, now speaks through the simplest gestures. A child playing, the sound of the wind, a stranger greeting you kindly. The entire universe becomes a message. Then, something extraordinary happens, without announcement or fanfare. One ordinary morning, the sun streams through the window and illuminates the dust particles suspended in the air. You watch them floating, and for a brief moment, everything stops. Time disappears. The body, the thoughts, the name, everything dissolves into a single sensation: to exist. It is a peace so pure it cannot be put into words. It is the instant when the self merges with the whole, and the boundary between the human and the divine ceases to make sense. You don't understand what happened. You only know that you will never be the same again. But the world doesn't disappear. Life goes on, demanding your presence. You go back to cooking, working, talking, listening. Only now there's a new awareness in every action. The soul has found the body. The spirit finally has learned to live in the flesh. And it's at this point that everything is reversed. The sacred is no longer above, it's within. It's not a distant place, it's the present moment. For a time, peace remains. Then, it too departs, and you understand that you must let it go. Because even light, if held back, transforms into shadow. Learning to let go is the ultimate gesture of wisdom. Jung said that individuation is an endless process. The soul expands, contracts, and expands again. It is the pulse of eternity within time. So you look around. Some who previously avoided you now approach you. Others still don't understand. That's okay. Compassion replaces judgment. You smile not because you've won, but because you finally understand. The transformation hasn't distanced you from the world. It's brought you back to it, more human than ever. But then suddenly something unexpected happens. A minor, almost banal event rekindles the memory of the mystery. A chance encounter, a slight accident, a glance that pierces you. For a moment you feel the same call from the beginning, only deeper, as if the universe were saying, "There's still more." Your heart races and your soul recognizes the journey is not over. Could awakening be merely the first step in an endless spiral? What if true enlightenment is the continuous movement between forgetting and remembering, between falling and rising? Carl Jung said that the process of becoming who you are never ends. It only changes form. Perhaps that is the ultimate secret. There is no arrival, only continuity. The cocoon has broken, the wings have opened, but the flight is only just beginning. And as you rise, something within you whispers, not like a voice, but like a silent vibration. Now go back and teach the world to see. And it is in this calling that the circle closes. He who once sought to understand the mystery now becomes part of it. The awakened being is not the one who found answers, but the one who learned to live within the questions. And looking towards the horizon, he realizes that the light that guides him has always been there, not outside, but in the center of his own heart. The moment arrives when silence becomes understanding. Everything that seemed distant falls into place with the precision of a cosmic clock. The journey, once full of uncertainties, reveals its purpose. It was not about escaping the world, but about inhabiting it consciously. Each loss, each disorientation, each dark night of the soul was a disguised invitation to a deeper reunion with one's own essence. Now, facing the complete cycle, you understand. There is no division between the spiritual and the everyday, between the visible and the invisible, between the human and the divine. There is only life, vibrating in all directions, asking to be lived with presence. Carl Jung said that the meaning of life is to become who you are. This seemingly simple phrase contains the essence of the entire journey. Becoming who you are means letting go of the weight of masks, the fear of rejection, the dependence on approval. It is recognizing that the soul has its own language, and that following this calling is the bravest act a human being can perform. It means looking inward without running away, accepting what you find, integrating the shadow, embracing what hurts, and allowing love to grow in the space between the ruins. True transformation doesn't happen in distant retreats or silent temples. It happens in small daily decisions. When you choose to listen instead of react, understand instead of judge, create instead of destroy. It is in that instant that the spirit manifests. Enlightenment is not a fixed state. It is a continuous movement of consciousness. It is the act of waking up every morning and, despite tiredness and fear, deciding to act with presence. It is washing dishes attentively, conversing without distraction, smiling genuinely. It's simple, but that's what makes the simple sacred. You realize that the world doesn't need to change for peace to exist. What needs to change is the way you see the world. External reality will always reflect the internal state. When the heart calms down, life reorganizes itself around that calm. When you become transparent to your own truth, everything that is false naturally dissolves. And little by little, what was struggle transforms into surrender. But there is no guarantee of permanence. The mind will seek control again, will try to recreate the old pattern. There will be days when faith wavers, moments when the shadow seems stronger. And it is precisely in these moments that wisdom manifests itself, not in the absence of fear, but in the choice to move forward even with fear. Jung said that the unconscious is an ally, not an enemy. It is the field where the soul converses with mystery. Learning to trust this conversation is learning to live. And then you understand. Awakening doesn't exempt you from human suffering. It transforms you. Pain ceases to be punishment and becomes a guide. Chaos ceases to be a threat and becomes part of the cycle of creation. Everything that once seemed like loss is, in fact, purification. And love, the same love that seemed distant, arises from within like a discreet sun that warms without asking for recognition. It is a love that doesn't need to possess, convince, or save, only to understand. Perhaps the greatest lesson of this journey is discovering that the divine is not outside, waiting to be reached. It has always been here, pulsating in every breath, in every gesture, in every glance. Spirituality is not an escape from the world. It is a total immersion in reality. It is the commitment to be present, even when it hurts. It is the courage to remain human while touching the eternal. Jung believed that each individual who awakens makes the world a little more conscious. This means that your personal process, however intimate it may seem, has a collective impact. When you heal an inner wound, you help dissolve an ancient pain of humanity. When you act with compassion, you inspire others to do the same. When you forgive yourself, you open space for forgiveness to spread. No transformation is small when it is authentic. What if this understanding were the beginning of a new way of living? What if, from now on, every thought, word, and action became an instrument of silent transformation? You don't need great deeds, you only need presence. Presence is the miracle. Imagine waking up tomorrow and deciding to act as someone who knows the world is a reflection of their own soul. Imagine looking at people and recognizing in them the same mystery that dwells within you. Imagine not fighting against what is, but collaborating with the flow of life, trusting that every event has a reason for being. That is the practice. That is the path. You no longer seek answers. You seek coherence. You no longer want to escape the darkness, but to illuminate it with what you have learned. You no longer want to understand the mystery. You want to live it. And it is at this point that the journey is complete. Not because it has ended, but because you have become the path itself. The seeker and the finder are one and the same. What to do now? Take this awareness to the world. Transform theory into action, reflection into practice, insight into action. The call is simple and urgent. Live with presence. Observe yourself before reacting. Breathe before judging. Listen before speaking. See the other as an extension of yourself. There is no separation. There is continuity. All of humanity is a single soul learning to recognize itself. And when fear comes, remember, what is being born within you is greater than any doubt. What has awakened can no longer be forgotten. You are part of something vast, something that surpasses and contains you. Life trusts you to express what it is. So, allow yourself to be the channel for this awareness. Be the space through which silence speaks. Be the simple gesture that changes someone's day. Be the gaze that reminds us that beauty still exists. It all begins with an inner movement, a silent decision, to truly live. If this script touched you deeply, if, for a moment, you recognized your own story within these words, don't let it be lost. Share your insight, comment, even anonymously, because every authentic voice nourishes the collective consciousness. Like this video so it reaches others who are also ready to awaken. Subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-knowledge and integration. This is just the beginning. The world is transforming through each person who chooses to see with an awakened heart. And now, you are part of it.